The outpost on Ardent 5 was quiet most of the time. For Tom, a human soldier stationed there, the days felt slow and routine. His main tasks were patrol, maintenance checks, and sometimes helping the engineers with small repairs. It was not an exciting assignment, but Tom did not complain. After years of service, he had learned to find comfort in calm days one evening while he was on patrol near the edge of the outpost. The calm broke. A loud boom echoed through the air. Tom looked up and saw a streak of fire tearing across the darkening sky. A small ship, clearly damaged, was falling fast. Its engines sputtered and sparks trailed behind it. Within seconds, the craft disappeared behind the hills. Tom's training took over. He reported the crash to the command center and ran toward the site. The terrain was rough, with sharp rocks and dry soil cracking under his boots. A thin trail of smoke rose in the distance. As he got closer, he could smell the sharp scent of burning metal. The crashed ship lay in a shallow crater. Its surface was scorched and dented, and pieces of hull were scattered around. Tom carefully climbed over the wreckage. Through a cracked section of the hull, he saw movement. Someone was inside. Pushing aside twisted metal, Tom entered the cabin. The air inside was warm and heavy with smoke. A tall figure lay slumped against the wall. She had smooth, pale golden skin that shimmered faintly in the light. Her hair was long and silver, and her clothing was unlike anything he had seen before. Ornate, flowing, and decorated with small glowing stones. Tom checked for injuries. There was a small cut on her forehead, and her breathing was uneven. She opened her eyes for a moment. They were a deep shade of violet, unlike any human eyes. Her lips moved, forming soft words in a language he could not understand. Before she fell unconscious again, he knew he had to get her out quickly. The ship's systems were sparking, and the smell of leaking fuel filled the air. Tom lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, but he could feel the steady rhythm of her heartbeat against his chest. Carefully, he made his way out of the wreckage and into the open. The walk back to the outpost was difficult. The rocky ground and her fragile state forced Tom to move slowly occasionally. Her eyes would flutter open, and she would look at him with a dazed, questioning gaze. Each time, he would say softly, "You are safe now." He did not know if she understood, but it seemed to calm her. When they reached the outpost gates, the medics were already waiting. Tom gently placed her on a stretcher. The medical team began scanning her with portable devices, speaking quickly among themselves about her unusual physiology. Tom stood nearby, catching his breath, watching as they carried her inside the medical bay. Hours passed before he got any update. One of the medics, a young officer named Rana, told him that the woman was stable. They could not identify her species, but she was humanoid, and her injuries were not life-threatening. She would need rest, fluids, and monitoring for a few days. Later that night, Tom visited the medical bay to check on her. She was lying on a bed, her silver hair spread over the white pillow. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the machines. Tom sat in a chair beside her bed. He wondered who she was, where she had come from, and what had brought her to this remote sector. After a moment, her eyes opened again. They focused on him, and this time, she seemed more aware. Her gaze lingered on his face, studying him carefully when she spoke. Her voice was soft but steady, though the words were still in her own language. Tom shook his head slightly, showing he did not understand. She seemed to think for a moment, then placed her hand gently on his arm. It was a simple gesture, but it carried a clear meaning. Thanks. Over the next 2 days, she began to recover. Tom visited often, bringing her water, helping the medics adjust her bedding, and showing her simple images on his datapad to try and bridge the language gap. She would point to objects on the screen, then say their names in her language, and Tom would repeat them. Then he would give her the human word, and she would try to repeat his. The effort made them both smile. One afternoon, while Tom was showing her a picture of Earth's oceans, she spoke a word slowly as if testing her memory. Tom. He looked at her in surprise, realizing she had remembered his name from when he had spoken to the medics. In return, she said her own name clearly for the first time, Lyra. The crash investigation team later reported that the ship had no identification codes known to human records. Its technology was advanced, far beyond standard trade vessels. Tom was told to keep his interactions with the passenger respectful but limited, as her origins and intentions were still unknown. Yet, whenever he walked past the medical bay, he found himself stepping inside, drawn by the calm but curious presence of Lyra. On the evening of the fourth day, the sky over the outpost shimmered with light. Several large ships entered the atmosphere, their hulls reflecting silver and gold under the fading sun. The outpost sensors lit up with alerts. These were not human vessels. The ships landed in perfect formation outside the gates. From them emerged tall figures in similar ornate clothing to Lyra's, but theirs was marked with symbols of authority and rank. Tom stood at the gates as they approached. One of them stepped forward, his voice clear and commanding as he spoke in Lyra's language. When she appeared at the doorway of the medical bay, the newcomers immediately bowed. It was the first moment Tom realized Lyra was not just an ordinary traveler. She was someone of great importance, though he had no idea just how much. That night, the quiet life Tom once knew was gone. He had no way of knowing that saving her would pull him into a world of politics, customs, and choices that would change his life forever. The morning after the strange ships landed, the outpost was filled with tension. Soldiers stood at every entrance, watching the group of visitors from a distance. The newcomers moved with graceful precision, their silver and gold clothing shining under the twin suns of Ardent 5. They spoke quietly among themselves in a language no one on the outpost understood. Tom had been ordered to stay close in case Lyra requested him. He did not know why the commander had singled him out, but he suspected it had something to do with the way she had looked at him the night before. It was not the look of a stranger toward a rescuer. It was something more personal, as if they shared a quiet understanding. Inside the medical bay, Lyra sat upright for the first time since the crash. She wore a long, flowing robe given to her by the visitors. The robe was light silver with small patterns that seemed to change slightly. When the light shifted, her hair was neatly arranged, and a small crown-like band rested on her head. When Tom entered, she gave him a small smile, one that made him feel strangely at ease despite the situation. The visitors formed a half-circle around her. They spoke in low tones, their eyes shifting to Tom from time to time. Lyra raised her hand, silencing them, and gestured for Tom to come closer. He obeyed, stepping forward until he was standing beside her bed. She spoke his name carefully, Tom. Then she placed her hand over her heart and said something in her language. Her voice was calm but firm. One of the visitors, a tall man, with a deep blue sash across his chest, stepped forward and tried to speak to Tom in broken human words. Queen, safe, because you. The word caught Tom off guard, Queen. He looked at Lyra in surprise, but she only watched him, her violet eyes steady. The visitors bowed slightly as the man continued. Lyra? Queen of Aurelia. Tom's thoughts spun quickly. A queen. He had carried her from a burning wreck, thinking she was just another traveler in trouble. Now he learned she ruled a whole empire. It explained the ships, the guards, and the way everyone treated her with deep respect. Lyra touched his arm gently and spoke again in her language. Her tone was softer now, almost like she was trying to reassure him. Tom did not understand the words, but he felt their meaning, wanted him to know she was grateful. The commander of the outpost entered the room, flanked by 2 officers. He gave Tom a quick glance before addressing the visitors in a slow, careful voice, hoping the translator devices would help. "We are honored your queen is safe here." The devices repeated his words in the Aurelian language, and the visitors nodded politely. It became clear that they wanted to take Lyra back to their ships. The medics confirmed she was healthy enough to travel. Before leaving, Lyra turned to Tom and said something that sounded like a farewell. But then, she hesitated instead of stepping onto the waiting transport. She reached into a small pouch and pulled out a thin silver chain with a small crystal attached. She placed it into Tom's hand. The crystal pulsed faintly with light as she closed his fingers around it. Tom did not know why, but the gesture felt important. He nodded once, keeping the chain secure in his palm as she was escorted out of the medical bay. For the rest of the day, Tom could not focus on his usual duties. He kept looking at the crystal, wondering if it was a gift, a token of gratitude, or something more. Its light seemed to react slightly when he touched it, glowing warmer in his hand that evening. While Tom was in the mess hall, one of the technicians approached him. She had been studying the wreckage of Lyra's ship and had found strange energy readings. Her eyes went to the crystal in his hand. "That's the same energy signature we picked up in the wreck," she said. "It might be connected to her ship's systems, or her people's technology." Tom kept the chain with him, wearing it under his uniform. The next morning, a small shuttle from the Aurelian fleet returned to the outpost. To his surprise, Lyra was on board. She stepped out, her expression calm, but purposeful, and walked straight to him. The visitors and human officers stepped back slightly, allowing her to approach without interruption. She spoke a few words to the blue sash guard, who turned to Tom. "Queen requests you come to ship." Tom hesitated, glancing at his commander. The commander gave a slow nod, though his face showed concern. It was unusual for an alien ruler to request a private audience with a soldier, especially one with no diplomatic training. Tom followed Lyra to the shuttle. Inside, the walls were smooth and glowed with soft light. Strange patterns shifted across the panels, as if the ship was alive. Lyra sat across from him and pointed to the crystal around his neck. She spoke in her language, then tapped her own chest, showing that she wore an identical one beneath her robe. Slowly, Tom began to understand. The crystal was a symbol of connection between them. It was not just a gift. It was a bond of some kind in Aurelian culture. Her expression told him this was serious. The shuttle docked with a much larger ship. When Tom stepped inside, he was surrounded by vast halls of silver and gold. The air was warmer, scented faintly with something sweet. Alien attendants bowed as Lyra passed. Tom felt out of place, but Lyra stayed close, guiding him through the corridors until they reached a chamber lined with flowing banners and a high seat at the far end. This was clearly a throne room, but instead of sitting, Lyra turned to face Tom. She began to speak again in her language, her tone formal. A translator device was placed in Tom's ear by one of the attendants. Now he could finally hear her words in his own language. "You saved my life," she said. "In my people's law, this creates a life bond between us, a protector and companion, always together." Tom stood there, unsure how to respond. This was no ordinary thank you. This was a tradition, perhaps a duty. And she was looking at him with complete seriousness. He realized this was the beginning of something much larger than he could have imagined. Tom stood frozen in the grand chamber, unsure if he had heard her correctly. The words from the translator echoed in his mind. Life bond, protector, always together. This was not a casual statement, and judging by the solemn faces of the attendants, it was not something taken lightly in Aurelian culture. Lyra's violet eyes stayed on him, calm but expectant. She did not pressure him with words, but her presence was steady. as if she already knew he would listen. Tom took a slow breath and glanced around the chamber. The walls shimmered with flowing light patterns, and tall windows revealed a view of the planet far below. It was beautiful, yet he felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. One of the blue sash guards stepped forward, carrying a small box. Inside was a second crystal chain, slightly larger than the one Tom already wore. The guard spoke in careful human words through the translator. When the Queen gives this, it means the rescuer is not only honored but joined with her under the law of life bond. Tom shifted uncomfortably. I am just a soldier, he said. This sounds like something for someone important in your court. Lyra stepped closer. Her tone was gentle, but her words through the translator carried meaning. In my eyes, you are important. She lifted the larger crystal and held it in her hands. You carried me from fire and gave me safety without asking who I was. The attendants in the room seemed to be holding their breath to them. This was not simply a tradition. It was a sacred ritual. The bond was both symbolic and legal in their society, linking two lives together in responsibility and loyalty. Tom's commander had once told him that humans were still considered mysterious. Among many alien civilizations, some saw them as unpredictable, others as surprisingly resilient. Tom wondered how this would be seen back home. A human soldier forming a life bond with an alien queen was something no training manual had prepared him for. The translator clicked softly as Lyra continued speaking. In our law, the life ally is equal in standing to the queen in matters of trust. They are protector, advisor, and partner. Her eyes softened. It is not forced, but it is rare for a queen to choose. Tom could see that she was giving him a choice. He could step back and this moment would end, or he could accept and step into a role that would take him far from the life he knew before he could decide. A group of Aurelians entered the chamber from a side door. They were dressed in deep blue robes marked with symbols of the council. The guard whispered that these were members of the Royal Council, the group that oversaw the laws of the Empire. The eldest counselor, a tall woman with silver markings across her skin, spoke through a translator device. We have been informed of the Queen's intention, she said. By tradition, this bond cannot be refused by the Council, but we may question if it is wise. Her gaze rested on Tom, and he felt as if she was measuring every detail about him. A human soldier from a remote outpost is not trained in our customs, she said slowly. Our enemies may see this as weakness or as opportunity. Lyra did not waver. Strength is not in bloodlines alone, she replied. It is in the heart and in actions, the council murmured among themselves, clearly surprised by her direct defense of him. After a few moments, the eldest counselor nodded slowly. Then let it be entered into record, she said. The guard stepped forward again, presenting the larger crystal to Tom. This time, Tom understood that taking it meant accepting everything that came with it. He looked at Lyra, searching her expression for any sign of doubt. There was none, only patience and trust. Slowly, Tom reached out and took the crystal from the guard's hands. The moment he closed his fingers around it, the crystal began to glow warmly, just like the smaller one he already wore. A soft hum filled the room as the attendants bowed. The blue sash guard spoke again. The bond is sealed. Lyra stepped closer and placed her hand lightly over his. In the eyes of my people, we are now bound, she said. Your life is tied to mine, and mine to yours. Tom felt the weight of her words settle, and he had not planned for any of this a few days ago. He was just walking his patrol route. Now, he was standing in a throne room, linked to an alien queen by a tradition older than human space travel. After the ceremony, Lyra guided him to a smaller chamber where the noise of the court could not reach them. The translator still in his ear allowed her words to flow easily. You may have questions, She said, "I will answer what I can." Tom nodded. "Why me? You must have many protectors, advisors, people who know your world." Her expression softened. "Yes, but none who acted as you did," she said. "When I was in the fire, I could see the danger in your eyes, yet you did not leave me. You did not weigh my value, you simply carried me to safety." Tom stayed quiet for a moment, then asked, "What happens now?" She gave a small smile. "Now you learn," she said. "My world, my people, our ways, and I will learn yours." From that day forward, Tom's life changed completely. He was given quarters on the royal ship, larger and more comfortable than any military bunk he had known. Servants and aides appeared at his door each morning, offering clothing made from fabrics so light they felt like air. He was taught basic Aurelian language phrases, though Lyra often laughed gently at his attempts to pronounce certain sounds. Each evening, they dined together in a private room, where she told him about the Aurelian Empire. It stretched across dozens of star systems, held together by both diplomacy and strong defense. Her position as queen was inherited, but also constantly tested by political rivalries and external threats. As Tom listened, he realized that the bond was not just a personal matter, it had political weight. By choosing him, Lyra had made a statement to her people, and perhaps to the galaxy. Humans, still newcomers in the wider universe, could stand beside the most powerful rulers. Tom knew he had a lot to learn. But as he looked across the table at Lyra, who met his gaze with quiet confidence, he felt something he had not expected. He felt ready to try. Days turned into a week aboard the royal ship. Tom was slowly adjusting to the strange rhythm of Aurelian life. Every morning he was given a schedule, language lessons, meetings with cultural advisors, and guided tours of the ship's different sections. The Aurelians were polite, but most watched him with quiet curiosity. As if they were still trying to decide what kind of man their queen had chosen as her life ally. One morning, Lyra asked him to meet her in the observation garden. It was a large open space in the center of the ship, filled with tall, crystal-like plants and small streams of glowing water. Artificial sunlight filtered through the transparent ceiling, giving the illusion of standing under a bright afternoon sky. Lyra was waiting near the center of the garden. She wore a gown of deep blue, lined with silver patterns that seemed to flow like rivers when she moved. Tom noticed that there were no guards nearby, which was unusual. She gestured for him to walk with her along the garden path. As they walked, she spoke in her own language, but the translator in his ear made her meaning clear. "The council will meet in 2 days," she said. "They expect a formal announcement." Tom frowned slightly. "About the bond?" "Yes," she replied. But not only that. She stopped beside a pool of clear water and looked at her reflection for a moment before meeting his eyes. "In our tradition, the life bond can remain symbolic, a link of honor and duty, or it can be joined fully as a union of lives." Tom understood what she meant. It was more than just being her ally. It was marriage in every way. The thought made his chest tighten. He respected Lyra deeply, but they had known each other for only a short time. Still, he could not ignore the connection they had formed since the crash. Lyra continued, her voice calm but steady. "The council wishes for clarity. Some believe a symbolic bond is safer for the Empire. Others think a full union would show strength and trust in this choice." Tom asked quietly. "What do you want?" She studied his face before answering. "I want what is true. If I say yes to a full union, it will not be because of pressure or politics. It will be because I believe in the person beside me." They continued walking in silence for a while. Tom could hear the gentle trickle of water from the streams and the faint hum of the ship's systems far above. He thought about the life he had left behind. Simple routines, familiar faces, and a future he could predict. Now, he stood at the edge of something completely unknown. Later that day, a royal aide visited his quarters with a formal invitation. It was written in both Aurelian and human script, sealed with the royal crest. It summoned him to the council chamber. The next evening, for a private discussion about his intentions. The chamber was vast and circular, with a high dome that shimmered faintly like starlight. 12 council members sat in a ring, their robes marked with different symbols of authority. Lyra sat in a slightly raised seat at the far end, though she remained silent while the council questioned him. The eldest counselor spoke first. "You have been given a place beside our queen by tradition," she said, "but tradition does not decide the depth of that place. We ask you now, do you accept the role as a full union binding your fate to hers completely?" Tom could feel every gaze in the room fixed on him. He thought carefully before answering. "I will not give a promise I do not mean. But I will say this, Lyra is not only a queen to me, she is someone I trust with my life. If she believes a full union is right, then I will stand with her in it." A quiet murmur passed through the council. Some members exchanged glances, others simply nodded. The eldest counselor turned to Lyra. "And you, Majesty? Do you choose this human as not only your ally but your partner?" Lyra stood slowly. Her eyes never left Tom's as she spoke. "Yes." The word was simple, but it carried the weight of a decision that would change both their lives. The council rose as one, placing their hands over their hearts. "The choice is made," they said together. After the meeting, Lyra and Tom returned to the observation garden. The artificial sky above was now a deep shade of violet, dotted with stars. "This will not be easy," she said quietly. "Our worlds are different, and there will be those who doubt us." Tom gave a small smile. "I am used to people doubting me. It just means I have more chances to prove them wrong." For the next 2 days, preparations for the royal proposal ceremony began. Servants and aides moved quickly through the halls, carrying fabrics, flowers, and banners. Tom was given formal Aurelian attire, a fitted dark suit with silver trim, along with the crystal chain. He had been given during the life bond ritual. The ceremony took place in the grand hall of the ship. Thousands of Aurelians attended. Standing in rows that curved around the central platform, soft music played from unseen sources, and the air was filled with the scent of sweet flowers grown on the royal world. Tom walked to the center of the platform where Lyra was waiting. She wore a gown of shimmering silver, and her crown was brighter than he had ever seen it. In her hands, she held a small silver band inlaid with a glowing crystal. It matched the one he carried around his neck. The eldest counselor stood beside them and spoke for all to hear. "Today, the Queen of Aurelia and her chosen life allies stand before us, ready to join not only by law, but by choice. This is the union of 2 paths into one." Lyra took his hand and placed the silver band around his wrist. The crystal glowed warmly, its light spreading to the chain around his neck. Tom then placed his hand over hers, the gesture sealing the choice they had made. The hall filled with the sound of the crowd's voices, a soft, unified chant of blessing. Lyra looked up at him, her eyes bright. "This is the beginning," she said, and in that moment, Tom knew she was right. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Tom stepped out of the private quarters and into the wide corridors of Lyra's royal ship. Every surface was polished and smooth, glowing faintly with soft white light. The halls were filled with servants and attendants moving quietly, all showing respect to the newly formed life ally. Tom felt slightly out of place in his formal attire, but Lyra's hand resting gently on his arm made him feel more confident. "Welcome to my world," she said softly, her voice carrying a quiet warmth. Tom glanced at her, noting the ease with which she moved through the halls. Even now, Moments after their union was formalized, she carried herself like a queen, graceful, calm, and commanding. Over the next few days, Tom began learning the daily routines of the Aurelian court. He attended lessons on language, history, and etiquette. Every activity was carefully structured, and while it was overwhelming at first, he discovered that his military training helped him follow instructions and adapt quickly. One morning, Lyra invited him to join her in the training gardens. The gardens were vast, filled with alien plants that glowed softly and water channels that reflected the artificial sun. A group of Aurelians were practicing coordination exercises and strategies for planetary defense. Tom watched as they moved, noting their precision and control. Then Lyra turned to him. "Do you want to try?" she asked, a playful smile on her face. Tom hesitated. He had some combat training as a soldier, but this was different. These exercises were part of Aurelian culture, combining focus, strategy, and physical skill. He nodded, and the instructor guided him through the routines. At first, he stumbled, unsure of the motions and timing. Lyra stayed close, offering quiet guidance and encouragement. Slowly, he found his rhythm, and by the end of the session, he could keep up with most of the participants. The instructors nodded in approval, recognizing his effort and adaptability. After training, they walked together through the gardens. Lyra explained more about her people, their history, and their philosophy. "Strength is measured not only in skill but in the heart and mind," she said. "You proved both when you rescued me." Tom smiled. "I did what anyone would do," he said, though he secretly wondered if he had done more than that. Lyra shook her head. "Not anyone, Tom," she said. "You acted without thought of reward or recognition." The days passed quickly. Tom began attending meetings with the council. Observing how decisions were made for the Empire, he learned that diplomacy was as important as combat and that patience, listening, and respect were vital for leadership. Though he was still a newcomer, the council started consulting him occasionally, especially when Lyra encouraged his opinions. One evening, while they walked along a balcony overlooking the twin suns setting on the horizon, Lyra spoke quietly. "There will be challenges, Tom. Not everyone will trust or accept a human in this role. Some may see you as weak or inexperienced." Tom looked at the glowing horizon, feeling a mix of determination and concern. "I will do my best," he said. "Even if they doubt me, I will. Prove that I am worthy of standing beside you." Lyra smiled, placing her hand over his. "That is all I ask. You do not need to be perfect. You need only be honest, brave, and willing to learn. Those are the qualities that matter most." Over time, Tom began to connect with other Aurelians. He shared stories of Earth, teaching small lessons about human culture and life. He learned from them in return about their technology, traditions, and daily routines. Many were cautious at first, but as he continued to show respect and curiosity, they began to warm to him. One morning, he joined a group responsible for maintaining the ship's defensive systems. The technology was far more advanced than any human system he had seen. At first, he struggled to understand the controls and interfaces, but he applied his logical thinking and determination, and with Lyra's quiet guidance, he learned quickly. By the end of the session, he was able to assist in minor adjustments without help. This small success gave him confidence. He realized that while he was human and new to this culture, he could contribute in meaningful ways. His skills and determination were valuable, even in a world that was so different from the one he had known. During their private moments, Lyra and Tom would explore the ship together. They shared meals in quiet corners, walked through the gardens at night, and sometimes sat in the observation deck watching the stars. They talked about their lives, their hopes, and the future they might build together. Though their bond had begun with tradition, it was slowly growing into something deeper: trust, friendship, and respect. One day, while visiting the communication center, Tom noticed reports from neighboring star systems. Some were friendly, while others showed signs of tension and rivalry. He realized that his role as life ally could involve more than learning customs and defending Lyra. He might need to represent her in negotiations, help in diplomatic matters, and even make decisions that affected entire star systems. Lyra noticed his concern. "You are not alone in this," she said. "The Council, the advisors, and I are here to guide you. Your human perspective is valuable. It is not your weakness, but your strength." Tom took a deep breath, feeling a new sense of purpose. He had once thought of himself as an ordinary soldier. Now he was part of something much larger, an empire, a culture, and a future that he had never imagined. And he knew that by standing beside Lyra, he could face any challenge that came their way. As the days turned into weeks, Tom's confidence grew. He was learning, adapting, and forming bonds with the people around him. Though life among the Aurelians was complex and sometimes overwhelming, he realized that he was not just surviving. He was becoming part of a world where humans, even a single soldier, could stand as equals alongside the most powerful rulers of the galaxy, through every lesson, every conversation, and every challenge. Tom and Lyra grew closer. Their bond was no longer just tradition. It was trust, partnership, and the beginning of a life they would face together. For Tom, the realization was clear. He had not only found a new home among the Aurelians, but he had also found a purpose and a partner he could rely on in the journey ahead. The Aurelians were preparing for an interstellar conference that could determine the balance of power across several star systems. It was the largest gathering the Empire had seen in decades. Leaders from allied and rival civilizations would be present. Every decision, every gesture, and every word spoken would be watched closely. Tom had been learning about the political landscape for weeks. Lyra had spent hours explaining alliances, treaties, and rivalries. He had studied the reports and practiced diplomacy with her guidance. Still, he knew this would be the first time he faced real scrutiny on a galactic stage. The morning of the conference, Lyra and Tom walked through the corridors of the flagship together. The halls were decorated with banners representing each system attending the meeting. Servants adjusted uniforms, polished surfaces, and checked communication systems. Every detail mattered. Appearances and first impressions could influence outcomes. Tom felt nervous, but Lyra's hand on his arm brought calm. "You have learned much, Tom," she said, "but remember they will test not only your knowledge, but your courage and honesty." He nodded, taking a deep breath. "I will do my best." When they arrived at the conference chamber, Tom was struck by its size. It was circular, with high ceilings and lights that reflected like starlight. Delegates from dozens of species filled the room. Some wore flowing robes, others metallic armor. They spoke in various languages, translated instantly by devices placed near their seats. Lyra rose to address the assembly. Her voice was firm but calm, carrying the confidence of a ruler who had faced challenges for years. She introduced Tom as her life ally, explaining his role not just as protector, but as a trusted partner in decision-making. Some delegates looked surprised. While others exchanged whispers, Tom remained standing beside her, unsure how he would be received. He could feel eyes on him, curious and skeptical. Many were unfamiliar with humans and their ways. Some wondered if a human soldier could truly serve as an equal partner to a queen. The first topic of discussion was a dispute over a resource-rich planet at the edge of Aurelia's influence. Several systems claimed rights to its minerals, and tensions were high. Lyra began presenting facts, supported by maps and reports. When a delegate from a rival system interrupted, Tom saw the moment to act. He stepped forward, speaking calmly. "Respectfully, I believe a shared management plan could benefit all parties. It would allow the resources to be used efficiently while preventing conflict." There was a brief silence. Many delegates had not expected a human to speak. Tom continued, outlining simple principles of fairness, resource, sharing, and cooperation. He spoke without aggression, without arrogance, focusing on logic and honesty. After a few minutes, some of the more cautious delegates nodded. Lyra gave him a small, approving glance. She added her support, emphasizing the wisdom of listening to different perspectives. The tension in the room eased, and the assembly moved forward with more productive dialogue. Later, during a break, Lyra and Tom walked through a side corridor. "You handled that well," she said quietly. "I feared some would dismiss you entirely." Tom shrugged. "I just tried to speak honestly. I did not want to appear weak or forceful." Lyra smiled. "That is why your perspective is valuable. Humans have a way of looking at problems, simply, without overcomplicating them. It reminds others that cooperation is possible." The second part of the conference involved a more delicate matter, an alliance. Member accused another of violating trade agreements. Voices were raised. Tempers flared, and delegates leaned forward in tension. Tom could feel the weight of the room pressing on him. Lyra placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Remember, honesty and respect," she whispered. When it was his turn to speak, Tom kept his tone steady. "I understand both perspectives. Disputes are natural, but solutions can be found through dialogue and compromise. Punishment or exclusion may worsen relations. A measured, fair approach will benefit all." The room fell silent for a moment. Then slowly, delegates began nodding and murmuring agreement. Several began proposing alternative solutions based on his suggestion. Lyra's eyes met his, and she smiled proudly. By the end of the day, the conference had reached several resolutions. Some were minor, some were significant. Lyra and Tom had both contributed. For the first time, many delegates began to see the human soldier not as an outsider, but as a valuable partner to the Queen. That evening, Lyra and Tom returned to their private quarters. Aboard the flagship, they were both exhausted but satisfied. "You did well today," Lyra said. "You were brave and honest. You represented our bond with integrity." Tom smiled, though he felt humility. "I learned from watching you. You lead with wisdom and courage. I only tried to follow your example." Lyra shook her head. "No, you did more than follow. You added your own strength. You reminded everyone here that humans, though few in number, can stand with the most powerful." As they sat together, watching the twin suns set over the horizon, Tom reflected on the day he had faced scrutiny, skepticism, and the weight of responsibility. Yet, with Lyra by his side, he had succeeded. He realized that the bond they shared was not just tradition or duty. It was a partnership built on trust, respect, and courage. Over the next few weeks, the aftermath of the conference reached the wider Empire. Reports circulated about the human life ally who had impressed the delegates with honesty and insight. Many Aurelians, once doubtful of a human's role, began to show respect for Tom. He was still learning, still adjusting, but he was no longer seen as an outsider. Tom also noticed a change within himself. He had started to believe in his own abilities. He understood that being human did not make him weak or inferior. In fact, his perspective, shaped by different experiences, gave him strength that complemented Lyra's leadership. One evening, while walking through the gardens with Lyra, Tom spoke quietly. "I did not expect to find purpose like this. I thought I was just a soldier on a small outpost." Lyra looked at him, her violet eyes warm. "You were meant for more. Your courage, your honesty, and your willingness to help have brought us here together. We are stronger than we could ever be alone." Tom reached for her hand, feeling the familiar warmth of the bond crystals around their necks. In that moment, he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, political, diplomatic or personal. They would face them together. And he also knew that humans, though sometimes underestimated, could rise to extraordinary heights when given trust, opportunity, and courage. For the first time, Tom truly understood the meaning of the HFY spirit. Not just survival or strength, but compassion, wisdom, and the power of choice. The galaxy had begun to take notice of the unusual partnership. Humans were still rare among the stars, and the story of a human soldier standing beside the Queen of Aurelia spread quickly. Allies and rivals alike observed carefully, wondering what this union would mean for the balance of power. Tom had grown accustomed to the life aboard the royal ship, but he still felt a quiet excitement each day. He walked the corridors alongside Lyra, discussing strategies, policies, and plans for expansion and cooperation. Though he had once been a soldier focused only on survival and duty, he now thought in terms of alliances, negotiations, and the responsibilities of leadership. One morning, Lyra led him to a new section of the ship. It was a research and development wing filled with scientists, engineers, and inventors. Strange machines hummed with energy, and holographic displays showed star maps, experimental technology, and new ship designs. "This is where we prepare for the future," Lyra said. "Every decision here will affect our people for generations." Tom moved through the room, marveling at the technology. He asked questions, listened carefully, and offered ideas based on logic and problem-solving. Though he was still learning, his perspective as a human often revealed simple solutions that Aurelians had overlooked. Lyra watched him closely, a proud smile on her face. "You have a gift for seeing what others cannot," she said quietly. "It is one of the reasons I chose you as my life ally." Weeks passed, and the partnership between Tom and Lyra became stronger and more visible. They attended meetings together, oversaw training exercises, and participated in diplomatic missions. The people of Aurelia began to see not just a human soldier, but a leader in his own right. They respected him for his courage, his honesty, and the dedication he showed to their queen and their empire. One evening, as the ship glided silently through the stars, Lyra and Tom stood on the observation deck. The twin suns of a nearby system bathed the ship in golden light. Tom turned to her, feeling the weight of all they had accomplished. "We've come a long way," he said quietly. "From that first day on the outpost, I never imagined I'd be here." Lyra smiled, her violet eyes reflecting the light of the suns. "Neither did I," she said, "but we found each other, and together we made a choice that has changed both our lives and the future of our people." Tom took her hands in his. "You trusted me with your life, and I promised to stand beside you. I will keep that promise, no matter what comes. And I will stand with you," Lyra said, "always." The next day, they received news from one of Aurelia's border systems. There had been a dispute between two colonies, threatening to escalate into conflict. Lyra turned to Tom. "This is a test," she said. "You will lead the negotiation alongside me." Tom felt a surge of determination. He had faced scrutiny, challenges, and unfamiliar worlds before, but this was different. Now he had a voice, a role, and the trust of a queen who believed in him completely. The negotiation was tense. The colony leaders were stubborn and cautious. Tom listened carefully, asking questions and offering fair solutions. He drew on lessons from both human experience and Lyra's guidance. Slowly, the leaders began to see that compromise was possible. By the end of the session, both sides had agreed to a shared plan for resource management, trade, and defense. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder afterward. "You handled that well," she said. "Your courage and honesty made the difference." Tom smiled, feeling a quiet pride. He had grown into his role, not just as a soldier, but as a life. Allie, a partner and a leader. He realized that humans could rise to extraordinary heights when trusted, supported, and willing to act with integrity. Weeks later, back aboard the flagship, a celebration was held. The council, advisors, and attendants gathered to honor the new partnership and their recent successes. Music, lights, and decorations filled the halls, and the people of Aurelia cheered for their queen and her life. Ally, Tom felt a sense of belonging he had never known. He was no longer just a visitor in this world. He was a part of it. During the celebration, Lyra pulled him aside to a quiet balcony. Stars stretched infinitely across the sky, and the ship glided through the cosmos with silent grace. "We have proven something important," she said, "that humans can stand beside the most powerful, that trust and courage can bridge worlds." Tom nodded, "And I have learned that true strength comes not from power alone, but from loyalty, compassion, and the willingness to act when it matters." Lyra smiled, placing her hand over his heart. "The galaxy has many challenges ahead, but together we will face them. Our bond is more than tradition. It is the beginning of a future where humans and Aurelians can achieve greatness side by side." Tom looked at her, feeling the warmth of the bond crystals around their necks. He realized that everything had led to this moment. A single act of courage on a distant outpost had grown into a partnership that could change the course of history. He had gone from soldier to life ally, from rescuer to equal partner of a queen. "I am ready," he said quietly, "ready for whatever comes next." "And I am with you," Lyra said, "always." As the stars stretched endlessly before them, Tom felt hope, purpose, and belonging. He knew the galaxy would test them, but together they were stronger than any challenge. He had found not just adventure, but a home, a partner, and a future filled with possibility. The celebration continued inside, but on the balcony, Tom and Lyra stood together, silent, united, and ready. The galaxy awaited, and they would face it together. Humans could rise to greatness, and they had proven it. Their story was no longer just about rescue or tradition. It was about trust, courage, and the power of partnership. It was about how one human soldier, by simply helping another, had changed the future of a star empire. And as the twin suns set once more, Tom knew this was only the beginning of a new chapter. For him, for Lyra, and for the many worlds that would come to know their unity.